Hi and welcome to this video. In this video, we will follow the entire process of developing a report within Power BI Desktop, starting with raw data, which sits in so many different CSV files, to a final report within Power BI Desktop, which looks like this. So the focus of this video is for you to get a taste of developing a report within Power BI and also understanding the mentality, how you approach each step, what are you thinking about, and all those things when you are working within Power Query Editor, when you're modeling your data, and when you're analyzing it, when you are visualizing it, all that end-to-end process. So if you're somebody who has just started learning Power BI or somebody who's just started following this masterclass, so this is where we will just give you a taste of the whole process. The idea is not for you to learn everything by just watching this video. We will cover in the following videos, I will cover everything in depth in terms of the Power Query Editor, the M language, the DAX formulas, the visualization, and the whole thing within Power BI Desktop. But for this video's idea is for you to get a taste of the entire process. To get the most out of this video, I will say watch it end to end, maybe at a faster speed without sort of trying to do it yourself, and then download the exercise file and then try to do the whole report yourself while keeping the video open, and then you can watch it as and when wherever you need to, or you can follow along with the video. But do watch it once without actually trying to do it uninterrupted, so that you get the idea of the whole process, and by that you will, by doing it twice, you will learn a lot more. So when we actually start learning Power BI Desktop, you will already understand some of these things and they become like hooks for you to remember more and more functionality within Power BI Desktop. This is all part of incremental learning. So let's get started and create your first report within Power BI Desktop. So let's begin by exploring our dataset. So I've sorted this dataset from Kaggle. I have included a link to this dataset in the video description. It's free to create an account on Kaggle, and you can download this dataset once you have logged in from here by pressing this button. It's 207 MB. It will be a zip file. Extracted file size will be 1 GB. You can follow along by downloading from here. As I said, you just need a free account on Kaggle. Once you have downloaded, then you can continue next. I have downloaded and extracted the zip file into a folder on my desktop, called it Bikeshare dataset. So if I open it, I can see in here we have 12 different files in here. So there is one file for each month starting from March 2021 to February 2022. So there are 12 months worth of data here, one file for each month. Okay, the file size is quite big, so it looks like there's lots and lots of data. So usually the very first thing I do is I will look at this. If I have access to source data like this, I will look at that source data and see what it looks like, just trying to understand the data set. If you are not familiar with the data set, the first thing is to familiarize yourself with the data set. What tables are in there, what columns are in there, what each field means, are there any fields which we don't need at all those things. So here we have it within Excel. So first thing, I want to expand all these columns so that I can see the data within them. So what I've done is I shift clicked on the last one and just double clicked on the border between any of two columns, and there we have it. It's expanded. So we can see here the columns that we have: ride ID. So this looks like a unique ID field. Then we have a rideable type, which contains values like, let's apply some filters here so we can see what values are there. So it contains classic bike, docked bike, electric bike. Now, if you see here this underscore all this way, if I was to show these values on a chart or in my report, that won't look very nice. So we will format this so that it's really nicely formatted for presenting within a report. Also, the column title here, column name, doesn't make much sense, so we will adjust that as well. So we'll look at column names across the whole table. We have here started at, ended at, which is a date time field here, where we have the start date and time, end date and time of the ride. And then we have the station from where the ride started, from where the bike was picked up, where it was dropped, the locations, longitude, latitude for start and end locations, and also this last column, which looks like a categorical variable here, which is different values categories. So we have casual rider and member riders. Again, the name doesn't tell me much, so we need to look at how we can adjust this and format it. So in terms of the data that we have here, some of this information, like for us, station name and station ID, probably we just don't need the station ID and the end station ID. So for the purposes of this report, we are not going into the whole process of normalizing our data and building a data model. We're going to keep it simple. So we're going to delete these two columns, and also we're not going to use the longitude latitude for our report purposes. So all these columns will not be necessary for our purposes, so we'll get rid of these columns. The idea is you always want to carry forward the data that you really need for your report. You don't want to bring in any extra data, whether in terms of the columns and also in terms of rows as well, if you need to filter out. So suppose you only wanted to analyze data just for January of 2022, then you only want to bring in that particular data set. You don't need all the 12 months worth of data. So it depends what sort of analysis you're doing and what's the data required for it, but always only bring in the relevant data. Now we have a bit more idea about the data set. Next, we will jump onto Power BI desktop and get started. So here we are in the Power BI desktop. And the first things first, we want to import the data. So it all starts with this get data button. Click on get data. If in your case, if you have got this pop-up screen here, you can uncheck this box so you don't get this every time. This is like a welcome screen which shows up, but you don't really need it every time. So you can uncheck this box so it won't show up. And then on the home ribbon, click on get data. And you can see here all these different data sources. And if you click on more, then we can see there's a lot more. So at the time of recording this video, more than 150 data connectors are available in Power BI. So you can bring in data from so many different data sources. In our case, our data sits inside a folder. So we have all these files in a folder. So Power BI allows you to connect to a folder and bring those files from the folder, because all our files have same structure. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine the data from all those files, 12 months worth of data, into one query and one table. Okay, so click on folder, connect. And then we have to now locate our folder. My folder is sitting on the desktop, so it is the Bikeshare dataset. Just locate your folder wherever you saved the extracted dataset and then press OK. And what this will do is it will show us this dataset that all these 12 different CSV files are there. And now we have a choice to make. We want to now, if you see this green highlighted button, combine button, we can either combine and transform data or combine and load. So combine and load, if you are happy with the formatting of the data and everything and what data is coming through, you don't need to do any work within Power Query Editor, then you can just combine and load. Otherwise, combine and transform data. In our case, we want to work with this data. We want to clean it and prepare it for analysis. So we're going to click combine and transform data. And once we do that, then we have this navigator here, which now shows us the preview of data within the first file, which we have already looked at in Excel as well when we explored that file. So we can see all those columns are coming through. It's showing the based on first 200 rows. It's a comma delimiter value, so comma separated value CSV file, and it's Western European windows in terms of the date and time it's picking up from there. Okay, so I am going to now click OK. And when we do that, Power Query Editor window opens. Okay, and we learned about this, that when we do get data, we connect to a data source, Power Query Editor opens in its own window. So let's maximize it. So this is our data. Now, if you see on the left-hand side, Power Query has done its magic. It's combined all this data. For the purposes of this demo, you can ignore all this transformation file and all those things. So you can just minimize it by clicking on that. So our focus is on this Bikeshare dataset. That's where all the data has been combined. So all the data from 12 different CSV files has been combined into one query here. Keep an eye on the applied steps as we go along. All these other steps are the ones which Power Query applied to get to this point, to basically create a link to all these files within the folder and then combine them into this one file. And then if you look at this last step here, it's change types. It's applied data types for each column as well. And Power Query does a really good job of identifying the data type for the data within the tables. Okay, now just remember, we are not seeing the entire data set at the moment. We are seeing the column profile based on top 1000 rows. So we are not working with the entire data set, and this allows us to apply these transformations efficiently. So now we will start working with our data set. So first things, we want to remove any unwanted columns. So this source name column basically contains the name of the file from where the data came from. So for each row, we know where it came from. Now we have this start and end dates, which tells us which month the data belongs to. So we don't really need the source name column. So all you need to do is right click on it, say remove, and that column is removed. And also we discussed that we don't need the start station ID and end station ID. So we don't need these columns. So click on one of these columns, and then you can control click on any other columns that you want to remove. So I selected first the start station ID, then press the control button and then clicked on this end station ID. Then also we don't want these longitude, latitude columns as well. So just select those columns by keeping your control key pressed and clicking on these columns. So we have all these 6 columns selected. All we want to now do is we can remove these columns by right clicking and remove columns. Okay, there we have it. Now again, it's trimmed down version of the data, which is pretty good. Next thing I want to do is I want to now look at the column names. So this ride ID, I think let's format it nicely. So ride ID, rideable type makes sense if we call this bike type. And we have 3 types here, classic bike and all those. We will look at how we format this data. Next, start date. So this is start date, and this is end date, and this is start location, and this is the end location. And last but not the least, double click and change this to rider type. So whether it is a casual rider or a member, it's a member of the Bikeshare scheme. Okay, next we want to now format this data in this particular column. So bike type, so we want to make it into 2 separate words. So classic and bike, 2 separate words without the underscore, and also make the first letter capital of each word. How do we do that? Really easy within Power Query Editor. Right click and then go to replace values. And what we want to do is we want to replace all the underscores with a space. So press space here in the replace with box and then press OK. And there you go, it's all cleaned up already. Next, what we want to do is we want to capitalize each word. So again, right click on this column, transform, and then capitalize each word. And there we have it, our data. All these values are nicely formatted now. Similarly, let's work on this rider type column. So we want to capitalize the first word. So just right click, transform, capitalize each word. There we have it. Already looking really good. Now a couple more things. So start date and end date, these are date and time columns. So we have the date and time of when the ride started, and similarly date and time when the ride ended. It will be nice if we can separate these into 2 separate columns so that we can do some analysis around how many rides were done at various times during the day and all those things as well. So it's very easy to create a new column from here. So select this start date column, and then on the top in the ribbon, go to add column, go to time, and then say time only. And this will create a new column here called time. Let's rename it. This is start time. Okay, and I'm going to drag it. Just click and drag and bring it next to start date. And also this start date column is set to start, it's a date and time column. Let's change it to just date. So now we have date and time here. Okay, nicely formatted. And we will do the same thing for the end date. So click on end date, make sure and add column is selected, and go to time and say time only, and then change this to end time. Drag it next to end date here and change the data type for end date by clicking on this icon, the drop down, and selecting date from there. So we have date, start time, end date, end time, start location, end location, and rider time. So really nicely formatted data. Let's now commit our changes and apply these transformation to the entire data set. So one more thing I want to do is I just want to rename this query. Instead of Bikeshare dataset, I want to call it Bikeshare data, like this, and then save, press enter basically. So we change the name of our query, and this becomes the name of the table once data is imported into our Power BI data model. So you can see here we have all these applied steps. One of the things that you try and do is when doing this data preparation within Power Query Editor is try to combine similar steps together. Basically, like when I was removing the columns, I did first removing of all the columns. That way there is just one step here which is saying we removed all these columns. So instead of having multiple removed columns steps here, we just have one step, and it contains the code which is written automatically in M language, and it's telling remove columns, these columns. So those are the names of the columns that we removed. And similarly renamed as well, when we renamed all the columns in one go. So we have one line of code where we have all the renames. So try to club together these similar type of operations. Okay. And also when you click on these steps, we can see the state of our data at this step. So you can very easily go back into time here and see where you were before you applied that step. Okay, so this is our final step now. All we need to do is commit our changes. So go to on the ribbon, go to Home tab and press close and apply. And this basically should now apply the transformations that we did within Power Query Editor to the entire data set and then import it into our Power BI data model. So you can see here in the load window how it's applying to the transformations and bringing in the data from different files here. Might take a few minutes. As I said, it's a pretty big data set. So there we have it. The data has been now imported. So this is the data. So by default, Power BI Desktop opens in the report view. If we switch to the data view, we can see our data here. So this is our data set. Again, you can apply formattings to your dates and times here as well. So we have applied date and time before. Now you can apply formatting. So it's showing like this, and I want to just change it to the format like this. So we will do the same to the end date as well. So that's end date. Okay. So next is the model view. In the model view, basically we create our data model, we build relationships and edit relationships between tables. In our case, we only have one table here. We don't have multiple tables. We don't need to create or edit relationships for this particular demo. As I said, this is a beginner friendly demo. We haven't even started learning Power BI Desktop properly. This is just to give you an idea of how you work within Power BI, what it really looks like creating reports within Power BI. I'll go as slow as possible so that you can follow along even if you don't know anything about Power BI and create your first report. That's the idea of this report, so that you get some familiarity with the entire functionality within Power BI Desktop, and you also get a good hang of the workflow within Power BI Desktop. Now, first things, let's start creating our visuals. So by default, this report view, we have page 1 here, so we can create multiple pages. If you are a new person to reporting, you've never worked with business intelligence and data analytics, how do you think, where do you get started? So the first thing is you have to start thinking about what are the key measures or key values that you're measuring here. So if you think about, this is ride share data. So there are rides, basically each row of the data set contains information about each ride. So basically there's a count of rides. So we can see how many rides done in a day, how many rides done in an hour, how many rides done in a month. So the count basically is the main thing, and we can check it against different categories and we can slice and dice it in different ways. So let's first try and see it by in a chart. So again, we have all these charts available here. And again, if you're new, you may not know which chart to use when, and we will learn everything about it, what sort of data type you can visualize better in which type of chart. Okay, for now, we're just going to click on this stacked column chart. What I want to see is I want to see how the ride count varies month on month. So when you click on the chart here, this pane opens and we have the x-axis and y-axis. X-axis is the horizontal axis like this, and the y-axis is the vertical axis. Okay, so in the chart on the horizontal axis, I want to see the months. So we want to get the start date. Now, if you notice here, in the Bikeshare data, when you click this, you will see all the columns, and in there, the end date and start date, they have these arrows again next to them, so you can expand these. So start date, when I expand, there is date hierarchy in there. Now you might be wondering, we didn't create this, where did this come from? So this is auto date and time functionality within Power BI. So basically, in my case, it's enabled. In your case, if you don't see it, basically you might need to enable it. So you go click on File, Options and Settings, again on Options, and here in Data Load, there's Time Intelligence, auto date and time for new files, and also in the current file, Data Load, Time Intelligence, auto date and time. So mine's already enabled anyway. If yours is not, you can click that checkbox and enable it. Okay, so that your date columns also have this date hierarchy. What this date hierarchy does is it allows us to look at these dates by year, quarter, month, and day. Okay, so let's see if I want to see data by month. So if I click on my visual again and then drag the month into the x-axis, okay, and now y-axis, we want to see how many rides in each month. We don't really have a measure, but if I was to put a column which contains unique values, and if we count them, it will give us the count of number of rides. So ride ID is unique for each row. So if I put ride ID into y-axis, notice what happens. Here automatically it says count of ride ID. So it's counting number of rides for each month, and it displays here. So let's just expand it a little bit. This is what it looks like. So this is count of ride ID by month. Now the annoying bit here is when you do something like this, when you are calculating ride, and we have to do multiple charts where we will need to see the count of rides, every time it will say count of ride ID, which is not a very meaningful column header. You can go and edit the column header, but it's better to create a measure that you can just drag and drop here so that you get the count, and also it allows you to give it a meaningful name as well. So how we calculate a measure? So you right click here on your table and say new measure, and there the formula bar opens. This is where we write DAX formulas to create our measures. This is part of your data analysis step. So we are doing analysis, creating this one simple. We want to say number of rides, okay, and then the function we're using, DAX function, is count, and the column we want to give it is Bikeshare data ride ID, and then close the bracket. And now if you see inside in the fields area here, we have, let's minimize this, we have this number of rides. So it's got this calculator icon next to it. So it's a measure. So you can tell from here that is a measure. Okay, so for this particular chart, if I click on it again in the y-axis, I'm going to remove this and just drop this number of rides, and you can see number of rides by month and number of rides here and month here. Okay, that's our first chart here. Okay, that's we're looking at data by month. Okay, let's see how this varies. If I want to see the number of rides, we have month, we also have day of the month as well, and quarter. So let's see how it varies if I was to look at data by day. So what we want to do is we want to create a copy of this chart. We want to create a similar chart. So just make sure this chart is selected, Control C, Control V, and you get a copy of this chart. Okay, and now make sure the second copy, this copy is selected. Go where it says start x-axis, just delete. And now we will select and enter the day here. Just drag and drop the day. So you can see here the days of the month, and if there's any trend to be seen there by days of the month. Not much meaningful data there if we look at this data by the day of the month. So we're not going to keep this chart. So you can click on this 3 dots and remove. There you go. You have removed the chart. Another thing we can look at is we can add more information into the same chart. So this chart, when it's selected, now I want to see how this is split between, this ride count is split between casual riders and members. So we have a column called rider type. And if you see in the fields, rider type, all we need to do is drag it from there and put it inside the legend. And when you do this, make sure this chart was selected. So we have selected the chart, dragged and dropped rider type column into the legend. Now we can see here this light blue color is for casual riders and the members are in dark blue color there. So we can see how it is basically. So there's a clear trend that the number of rides is higher during the summer months, okay, and lower during the winter months there. So it increases as the summer approaches and then it dies down towards the end of the year during the colder months of the year. Now also what we can do is, if we just make sure this chart is selected, we can click on this line chart here, and this will show the same data in the line chart. So you can change the type of the chart. So if you want to just see which chart will work best, so you select the chart and you can select different charts here, visuals types here. So this is another way of looking at it in the form of area chart as well. So usually for trends, pretty good like this. If you want to see this as well, this is still meaningful. You can see how it's increasing and it's quite clear to see the split there. I like the look of this area chart, and I can see clearly here that the casual riders, there are more casual riders in the month of July when compared to member riders. It's neck and neck there in June and here, whereas the rest of the months, the member riders, so in winter months, member riders are basically doing more riding than the casual riders, whereas in summer months more casual riders. So tourists, basically a lot of tourists comes around, and the increase in casual riders basically results in this increase in casual rides here. So that's a good sort of insight we got from here, how it varies from throughout the year and also how it varies between casual riders and member riders. Okay, that's a good chart. Now next we want to see is how these rides vary by the bike type as well. Okay, so maybe what I want to do is, if I want to click on a pie chart, so see, because I still had the chart selected and clicked on pie, that's what happened. So what we want to do is just undo this change by Control Z and just click on the blank canvas here, and then now click on the pie chart. Within the pie chart, we want to put the bike type as the legend. So we have that, and the values will be number of rides. So we want to see number of rides by bike types. So you can see here the majority, 57%, is classic bike, and then second biggest is the electric bike, and then there is a dock bike as well, which is only around 5.5%. Okay, so again, this is a good data to look at. For each visual, there is formatting options available. So if you select a visual and then click this icon with the brush on it, this is where you can format your visual. So what I want to do is, this legend I don't like to see here, I want to see it at the top. So say center, top center, okay, there. And I don't want to see bike type in front of it. So this title, I want to switch it off for the legend. So I don't want to see like bike type written there. Also, this chart title, I want to see it in the middle. So make sure you go to journal here within formatting, go to title, and then click on the center line button there. So we have it center line now. Okay. And also we can basically reshape it or resize it to make it so it doesn't take any unnecessary space. Okay, that looks pretty good now. And we can do the same thing if we want to do so. Control C, Control V, and let's see the split here for, instead of bike type, by rider type. So if I was to bring in the rider type here, so I've removed the previous legend and just dragged in the rider type into the legend placeholder here, and then we have now the split between member and casual riders. So more almost same if you see from here, but actually it's 55% rides by the member riders and casual riders account for 48.8, so almost 49% of the rides are by the casual riders. So that's again a nice split to see there. And because we copied, it's already done all those changes for us in terms of the formatting. We don't need to apply all that formatting again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this chart here to the top, and also this chart here on this side. I'm going to just make this slightly smaller, and Let's see if I can make this a bit smaller. And there we have our 3 charts, and we will finally format it like later on anyway. We will have more chance to make it look nicer, but for now I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so those 3 charts give us a lot of information there. I'm interested in looking at the split of this rides by within a week. Is there any difference between how the number of rides vary between the days of a week? Are there more riders during weekends or whatever? And also I want to see how this varies between the time of the day as well. What's the trend like within the hours of a day as well? Now, if we was to create a chart like this one, and let's just quickly format this one as well, where I go to formatting tab. And now first thing is I want to change the title, make it center aligned. And also in the visual setting here, legend, and I want to make it top center and hide the title. So there we have it. So press Ctrl C and Ctrl V, and we have a copy of this chart. And now instead of months, I want to see the days of a week. Now this auto time intelligence only gives us the quarter, month and day. We don't have the day of a week. So for that purposes, usually you will need to create a custom dates table, or it's sometimes called as calendar table as well. So let's learn how to create a date table quickly. Again, I'm not teaching DAX in this video. This is, just follow along. So we are going to create date table using DAX, and within Power BI you can create this using the Power Query editor as well, and using M language as well. So there are quite a few different ways of creating a date table. We're going to just simply create using the DAX. So the way we create a table using DAX is, let's go to the data view. In the data view here we have the home, and then here click on new table. Okay, and then here in the formula bar where it says table, let's change the name to dates, and then we want to put the calendar function, and this we have to feed the start date and end date. So we know that the start date is from 1st of March 2021 and end date is the 1st of March 2022. So we're going to provide the start and end date by using date function, providing the year, which is 2021, then the month, which is 03 March, and then the day 01. So that's where it starts. The end date, date function, provide the year, the month and the date, close this bracket, close the outer bracket, press enter. And there we have it. So we have a column which contains all the dates that we need for those 12 months. Now this one is in date time format. We only need the date, so you can click on it and change this to your short date format like this. So that's what we have used in our main table as well. Okay, so now we have the date. What we want is now things like the month, we want the weekday and all those things, and we can bring in all those things again using the DAX formula. So make sure this column is selected, and then you can now click on new column. So we have already got our table now called dates, and in that we'll keep on adding the columns. The first column we want to add is the month num. So this will give us the number for the month, so like 0 to 12, so month, and then we have to provide the date field, which is the dates table, and you can see here it's giving us this option here, and now this should give us the month number. So you can see here 1st of March, so 3 here, so on and so forth. Similarly, now we want another column which should contain the name of the month, but we don't want to use full name. We only want the first 3 letters of each month, so month. And for that, what we want to do is we want to use format, and then we're going to provide it the value, which is the date, dates table, date column, and then the format you have to provide inside the quotation marks MMM. So triple M means shorter month, 4 M's means full month name. So we want triple M, close the bracket, press enter. Again, just follow along for now. So we have all these are DAX formulas we are using. So this one, we have created a month here. Next, we want to add the weekday, so number and weekday name as well, both the things. So let's add a new column. Let's call it weekday num. So this way we will get the number. So weekday, and then we will provide it the date. So dates, date column, and then press enter. And then they should give numbers between 1 to 7 depending on the day of the week. And next column we will add is the name of the day. So Sunday, Monday, so on and so forth. So let's call it weekday. And then we will now use the format function, and we will go give it the dates column, comma, and then we are going to use the format here of DDD, so triple D, to get the weekday name, and that also the first 3 letters of the weekday name. Press enter, and there we have it. So now let's switch back to our report. So if we see here, we have used all this time intelligence before. What I want to do is I just want to change this chart number of riders by month and rider type here. If you just click on it and go to your visuals, and here instead of start month, I'm just going to close this, and if I go and use month column from the dates table, our data doesn't have the trend. Do you know why? Because our tables don't have a relationship. So this is where we use the model view. So now we have this dates table, and we have our Bikeshare data, and we want to tell that this date is related to this start date. Through this date, these 2 date columns, these tables can talk to each other. So whatever we select from here, that same filter applies to this data now in the Bikeshare. And usually this is how we will lay out our data as well. So the main fact table here at the bottom, and then any dimension tables or lookup tables on the top. Okay. Also, we can create the relationship between date and end date as well, but at a time only one relationship will be active. So we are just going to use the start date for now. That's what we need mainly for analysis. So now our tables are related. So if we go back to the report view and see, the data is there now, but the trend looks very different because the months are not sorted in any way. So if I was to go here, more options, sort axis by month, and we want to sort the axis in ascending order by month, it's sorting alphabetically. Okay, so it's not sorting January, February, so on and so forth. So for that, what we have to do is we have to click on the month column in the dates table in the fields here on the right hand side, and then on the top here we have this option of sort by. So we can sort the month column by the month num, which is 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. So that way it makes it easy to sort it. And now if you see here, our chart is nicely formatted, and months are also sorted January to December. Okay, that's that. Now let's get our data for the weekdays. Now that's what we wanted to see. So I have got this selected here, this chart, the second chart, and in the visualizations pane here, I'm going to remove the x-axis, the start date, and bring in the weekday into the x-axis. And again, it's not sorted in any way, so we want to sort it. So sort axis, weekday, and sort it in ascending order, but still doesn't sort it properly because we'll have to do the same thing. So make sure in the fields pane, weekday selected on the right hand side, and then sort column by weekday num. So now you must know why we got the month num and weekday num columns. That allows us to sort our data in the weekdays and months nicely. So now this is interesting chart. So we can see here that weekends, lot of casual riders, more casual riders on weekends. Weekdays, more member riders. So people use this for commuting. That's a good trend to see. Another thing we want to see is we want to see how the trend varies during the day, during different hours. So when do people hire bikes during the day, all the different hours of the day during the 24 hours in a day. So for that, I'm just going to copy this, select this chart, second one, Control C, Control V, and then just drag it this side. And now what we want to do is, I want to, instead of weekday here on x-axis in the visualization, I want to bring in the start time. Okay, now still decent trend there, but it will be good if we club the data like between say 2 to 3 as 2 o'clock kind of thing. So we can have these hours broken down into solid hours. That way we can see some nicer trends here. But even this one still shows trends, but not that great. Even if I change to line chart as well, it won't still look nice. So what we want to do is we want to go and edit our data. So for that, what we want to do is we want to go transforms here on the top, transform data, click on that. And what this will do is it will open Power Query Editor again, and we can do any additional formatting and changes that we want. So what we want to do is we want to get this start time. Okay, we want to go to add column at the top, go time, and then here hour, we want to say start of hour. So for each hour, so this is 8:32, shows as 8 o'clock, 8:40 will show as 8 o'clock, and all those. So each time we are now grouping it into that particular hour basically. So this one, instead of saying start time, start hour. Okay, that's our new column. And then we're going to go home and close and apply. And there we have that applied now. So now because we have a huge data set, it has to apply that same one change to all the data and then import it into the BI data model. So this is because of the size of the data set, it's taking a little bit of time. Again, depending on the processing power, depending on the size of the data set, it might take longer or shorter. So this is the last of the files that the changes are being applied to, and our data load should complete now any minute. So there we go, data has been loaded. So this, make sure this last chart is selected, and in the x-axis I'm going to remove this start time and I'm going to bring in the start hour here. And there we have it. We have a really nice trend here again between the casual and member riders, and we can see here that the peak is usually in the evenings, 5 o'clock, and again member riders more there. It's like people commuting from work, and in the mornings around 8 o'clock, between 8 and 9 I guess. So that's when people are commuting to work, and then there is a bit of a spike during the lunch hour as well. And then casual hours, casual riders, again people riding casually after work. So there's a gradual peak there, and also any tourist as well, they won't ride really early in the morning, so the numbers increase as the day goes along, and then it drops down gradually kind of thing. So more casual riders, midnight, exploring the city maybe. But you can see again, this is really meaningful data here that we can see. So this is a lot of good information that we have. We can create a lot more charts, but for understanding the process, I think this is good enough in terms of a report. So we can clearly see from this first chart that there are more casual riders riding in the month of July, and rest of the months it's basically more member riders. Especially in winter months there is less casual riders, and member months overall more riders riding during the summer months and less riders riding during the winter months. The split between member and casual riders, there are more member riders than the casual riders in terms of the number of rides that they do. And then in terms of the split between different bike types, so we can see here classic bike, electric bike, docked bike. So the maximum number of rides happen with classic bikes, and then gradually I guess it will pick up a lot of people riding the electric bikes as well. In terms of weekdays, we can see a lot more member riders riding the bikes during using the Bikeshare option during the weekdays, whereas weekends there are more casual riders. And in terms of the split during the day, we can see there are big spikes during the early morning commute to work and afternoon after work commute. And then similarly, there's a trend for the casual riders as well. So we've got a lot of meaningful information from this for anybody who is looking at this, and they can make some informed decisions. Again, we can also, if we was to go and click on this plus button here, we can also, what we can do is we can create a metric. So if you see here, there's a metrics visualization, click on that. And then let's say if we put our start location as the row here, and in the values, let's put number of rides in values. And here we have it. Now, this first one is blank because looks like for the 712,000 rides out of 6 million, we don't have the start location available. So we can filter that out. And what I really wanted to see was if I was to sort this in terms of which locations are more popular in terms of start ride, where the most of the rides start from. And this way the city can plan, or the bike share provider can plan and put more bikes there, and especially during those hours when most of the rides start from there. So again, this will be a good stat to have. And also what we can do is we can, let's drag this here slightly, and we can copy this, and we can do the same here for end locations as well, like where do most of the rides end. So I'm just going to change the start location to end location here. And here also, if it's already sorted, so we can see a lot of blanks there, but apart from the blanks, we can see Streeter Drive and Grand Avenue. This is the most number of rides, and again, this is where a lot of bikes will be available to pick up and take them to the start location. So we have idea of when the most of the rides start, which locations they start, and this can help to plan around where should most bikes be made available. Okay, so that is what we want to do in terms of analysis. Now, next step is obviously we want to make this look nicer. So usually you want to have a nice sort of color scheme which is consistent and which makes your visuals appealing and also easy to read and understand. So for that purposes, usually we have this option of applying themes. You can apply your custom themes. This is a pretty more advanced topic. For now, we have these inbuilt themes. Let's try this dark theme. So this one is called Innovate. So if you click on that, and there we have it. So this will apply a specific background color. It will sort of, formats our charts. It applies certain colors to the charts as well. And just by the press of that one button, our whole visualization looks pretty decent now. What we want to do is we want to select our charts, these two. Let's first bring these a bit down, move this towards this side and this one. So let's see if we can make this a bit smaller and move this towards here, and then they are kind of same height as well. Okay, and this one I will bring it a bit lower here, make it bigger this way, and it's aligned here also. Let's make it aligned here. This one, bring it down and it's aligned, and this one also is, we will bring it down and align it. So there we have our charts nicely aligned. One more thing I want to do is I want to include the number of rides on the top as a card. So for that, what we need is a card visual. So this is a card visual, very popular. This is just to show some sort of measure or a number here. So in this case, we want to show number of rides, and depending on what we select within charts, it will keep on updating automatically. So what we want to bring in here is the number of rides field, and that's how it shows. We have to format it to make it a bit smaller. So go to the call out value. It says size is 45. Let's make it 24, maybe a bit more smaller as well. So 18, and then the call out category label, we will make that also smaller to 8, and then let's make this whole box smaller so that it will fit at the top, and and let's bring it here. Still a bit big. Let's see. Okay. Let's see if I can squeeze this chart slightly. There is scope. Yes, we can bring this lower, and similarly squeeze this one and bring this lower as well. There we go. And now we can make this bit bigger. Number of rides. There we have it. And now this one, maybe formatting wise, we can add a nice border around it. So go to general, go to effects and visual border, make it on, change the color to this yellow color. You can make the corners rounded if you want. We don't need to do all that for now. And let's see what it looks like. That's what it looks like. We can make it bigger or smaller, again, depending on the border, thicker or whatever makes it more appealing for you. Another thing we want to do is we want to add a chart title. So for that, you have to go to the insert ribbon here on the top, and then go and select the text box and type in Bikeshare data analysis or Bikeshare report. This is from March 21 to Feb 22. Okay, then select this and let's make the size a bit bigger. So if I was to make it 20 and horizontally drag it and like this, and let's bold it, and also let's change the color. So we will use that same yellow here, and now we will drag this to the top. So that's our report. You can keep it in the middle if you like, or on the left. Again, depends on your liking. I'll keep it in the middle. And also what I'm going to do is squeeze this slightly so as to create a bit more space there for the title, so it's more readable. It should not look congested. Again, when it comes to beautifying your report, you can spend a lot of time on these things. You can probably, like these titles, I can go and make these title under general. I can make this a bit smaller. So this is 14 size at the moment. I can make it 12. Same I can do for these two charts as well. So I can select those two, change the title size to 12. And now again, I can make these a bit smaller. And it's still fully readable in terms of data. Keep an eye on that nothing disappears, so your data should be fully readable as well. And I'm going to do the same thing with these two charts as well. Change the title size to 12 so that it remains consistent, and also we get a bit more breathing room here. Okay, so now we have our chart, nice report, nicely formatted. And also I want to insert an image here. So I have basically, what I've done is I've downloaded a PNG file, which is like an icon for this bike sharing. So I'm going to put this here on the top, and that's what it looks like. I can make it actually smaller and bring it next to the title here. I guess it looks nicer there. And now if I was to click, say, suppose select, I want to see these member riders, and I can see 3 million of these. Again, you can format the data here as well if you want. So we can format our measure to show a bit more accuracy. So you can click on this and go to the format tab there, and then change this to decimal number, or just select here and increase the decimal places. So we can see like that 3.1 million now. So also we can just click again on the value that you selected, and so you can see the whole. So it's 5.7 million. That's the total number of rides. And yeah, that's what we have, and it looks pretty good. In terms of the steps within the Power BI desktop, this is the last step in report development. So our report is now ready, and finally we can now publish it onto Power BI service. So this page 2 looks like this for now. For the purposes of this, let's do one more thing here. So here where we have the start location, Let's filter out the blanks. We don't want to see the blanks. And similarly, the end location also, click on these filters, and where we have end location, click the drop down, select all, and uncheck the one which is the blank one. And there we have it. And now it's not sorted, so let's sort it. And let's sort it. Let's drag and we can see more of the data. This is our main reports. Rename this page. And this is rename location data. This is location data. So once we are happy with our report, now we can publish by publishing this. So you can see here I'm already logged in. I have already created a login on Power BI service, and all I need to do is just push this button to publish this report onto the cloud, onto Power BI service for sharing further. So if I just click here, publish, it's asking me to save first. Obviously we haven't done our save here, so I'm just going to do is I'm going to save my file on desktop, and I'm going to call this as Bikeshare reports 2022 and press save. And now by doing this, we are saving our PBIX file. So this PBIX file will contain the final data set inside it and this whole report inside it. So now when we are trying to push it, we have the option to select where we want to push it. So we have different Power workspaces. I want to push this into my workspace. So just select that and push it. You may not see those other options if you create a new Power BI service account. So when I press publish, now it's publishing this report onto Power BI service, and there you go, it's been published. So it also gives you a link here. So if I click on this link, it should take me to my account online. I'm already signed in here in the browser, so it shows me this report, and it's still fully interactive like how it was in our Power BI desktop. And then also we have this other tab of location data. So there we have our report finally published on Power BI service. So we've gone from raw data to creating a report. I have tried to go as slow as possible, explained you all the steps. The main idea is to just for you to get a hang of this whole process of working within Power BI desktop and how you think when you go through each stage, and understand that this is not a very serial process where you go from one step to another and you don't come back. You can always come back. So as we had to go back into Power Query Editor to add in some additional columns for the star tower and all those things. So you can always do that to and fro depending on as we go and analyze and as we visualize our data, then we keep on enriching it. We keep on adding more information into it in terms of new columns or new measures. And then the idea is to extract as many useful insights as possible, especially if you already have a sort of idea of who this report is for and what they are looking for and what sort of insights will help them make the right decisions. So that's how we go and publish and create reports in Power BI desktop. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Again, I have included a link to the Kaggle dataset within the description, so you can go and download. You might need to create your free Kaggle account to download it. And also the link, I will also provide a link to this PBIX file so you can look at this final PBIX file as well. So there we go. We have gone from raw data in CSV files and created this nicely polished report within Power BI desktop and also published it onto Power BI service. I hope you learned a lot in this video. If you have any questions regarding what we covered in this video, do leave a comment. If you like this video, do give me a thumbs up, and also subscribe to the channel if you want to get notified of the future videos. This whole series now we will get started with learning Power Query Editor within Power BI desktop, and we will learn everything about collecting data, working with different types of data connectors, and then in terms of how we prepare our data, how we clean it, how we merge, append different queries, how we enrich our data, and then how we load it into the Power BI desktop. And then we will follow up with the rest of the functionality within Power BI. By the end of this Power BI Masterclass, you will be fully confident and a competent user and developer within Power BI desktop. So keep on learning, and I'll see you in the next video.